Welcome to episode 6 of the Beers, B Movies, and Battle Royales podcast. I'm Nick Zamboni.
I'm Sam Collins.
Welcome to our guest and friend, Josh Simmons. Hey, Josh.
Hi, everybody.
How you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Are you feeling good?
Yeah.
Are you glad you're here?
Had a glass of scotch before coming here, so
Heck
I'm good.
yeah.
There you go.
And a beer.
Wow.
Let's go.
All right. Well, on that note, let's crack on in and get right into our first beer of today.
Yeah. Today we're drinking Great Lakes Brewing Company's Edmund Fitzgerald Porter, which, if you're familiar with beers at all, Great Lakes Brewing is a great brewery, and they're from Cleveland, Ohio. And this particular beer is like a darker beer, and basically what differentiates porters from other beers, it's slightly less dark and like flavor and tones than stout would be.
Yeah.
I was reading online, and basically it seems like a stout was like extra porter. That's what they called it, but no one wanted to say that, so they said stout. But the beer itself, it's called Edmund Fitzgerald because it is a particular ship that crashed in 1975. Basically, the ship was kind of a legend in their community and was kind of known for being a workhorse and like doing a lot of jobs very quickly. And also, the captain of the ship, who was Captain Peter Pulser, was also known as a DJ captain. And when he would go through towns passing by, he would play music and would just entertain people who were watching. And he'd also play music all the time, night and day.
Do you think he did bar mitzvahs? Weddings?
I mean, he probably could have got into that, but
I mean, captains can technically marry people, at least.
Yeah.
At least according to pop culture.
that's true. But I mean, I wish I could have seen him. I'm sure he was a good guy. But basically, they were caught in a storm, and the ship crashed, and everyone perished. It's a sad story, but it's a good story because he meant a lot to the community, and the ship meant a lot to the community.
Additionally, there is a song about it. Look it up. It's called the Sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
It's a good old folk song from the American North.
Do you know who it's by?
I can't remember his name right now.
I listened to it today, but yeah, it's very folky. And,
Wow.
But
DJ what?
he's DJ Captain. Like,
DJ Captain.
Yeah.
That was his name?
Well, that's like his nickname. Like, I'm sure some people actually knew his name, but they were like, "Oh, it's the DJ Captain." It's the '70s, you know. They kind of just called people what they wanted to, like. But yeah, this porter. I mean, I've tried it many a times. I think Josh has too. Is this your first time, Nick?
This is my first time having a Great Lakes Brewing Company beer.
Okay. What are you thinking?
Well, I like it. I'll say this. Stouts aren't my normal go-to types of beer. I think that I like to be able to drink my beer. I don't like eating my beer. So when it comes to like darker beers, I'm a lot more picky. But it's pretty good. It's not too overwhelming. It's not too thick. I think it's like if you're just like gonna drink one, or if you have to drink one, I'd drink it.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way.
Can't complain.
With porters. I don't like them that much.
Yeah.
I know this guy, Josh, is a big dark beer fan.
We chose this for you, Josh.
Yeah.
What's up? So, yeah, I'm definitely a dark beer fan. Porters and stouts are my go-to whenever I go somewhere new. I give a try to whatever dark beer's on the menu. This one, it's not my favorite. I've definitely had it before. However, this is definitely a good porter because dark beers can either fall into they can fall into a couple of different categories, and one of those is that they have way too much flavor, which this one doesn't, so I definitely like it. And then there are also those that are just nasty, like milk stouts or breakfast stouts. Don't drink breakfast stouts if you have the option, people.
What is the goose or duck
rabbit?
The duck rabbit milk stout.
Oh, God,
I'm not a fan of that.
Throw up every time. Maybe
I'm not a fan of that.
Maybe we'll have that one on.
We used to host this person's boyfriend, and they would gift us duck rabbit, and like they probably gave us like 3 of those, and we didn't drink them because they were awful.
Dang. I don't think he liked you very much.
No. Well, he really liked that beer, but we were too nice and didn't say, like, oh, we don't like this.
Awesome. Well, that's the Great Lakes Brewing Company, Edmund Fitzgerald Porter. Let's get your rating, Sam.
I'm going to give this 3.5 out of 5 tabs. I'm just like not a big fan of porters in general, but this one in particular I like a lot. So it's not my favorite, but it's good.
I'm probably a bad person to ask for this rating because I just really am not a porter fan. So I'm going to give it a 2.5 ball tab. Or oh gosh, all right. So let's say this. So we're drinking out of bottles today instead of cans. And it's
appropriate for today.
It's appropriate for today, and it's in protest of the movie that we had to watch and getting preached at. So we're not being environmentally friendly today. We're drinking out of bottles.
Stick it to the man.
Stick it to the man. Stick it to Birdemic, Shock and Terror. So today is going to be bottle tabs.
Okay.
Bottle caps.
Definitely bottle caps.
Bottle caps. 2.5 out of 5 for me.
What are you thinking, Josh?
I mean, I'm thinking a solid 3.5. Like, I would definitely drink it again because I have drank it before. But it's not outstanding, and that's okay. It's just a solid, good porter.
Yeah. And if you guys have any beers you would like us to drink, if they're good, or Josh actually recommended that we do also review bad beers, which I think would be pretty interesting.
I think that would be hilarious, but please be nice to these guys. two good beers for every one bad beer recommendation, please.
So I actually have this idea, we can talk about it later, but where we do like an everything is awful segment and we just review things that are awful.
Heck yeah.
Just staying true to the nature of some B movies, and we just have episodes where we just review awful beers, awful everything. We rant on things that we hate. It's going to be a great time. We're going to bring it in.
The worst battle royales.
Oh yeah. We can pick out some games that we hate that offend us.
That sounds like a good that sounds like counseling to me.
Some therapy.
Some therapy, yeah.
This is a therapy podcast.
Yeah.
Not a entertainment podcast.
And how does that make you feel?
Well, let me tell you how Birdemic made me feel. Any other thoughts on this beer?
No.
No? Josh?
Try Great Lakes as
you finish downing it.
But I guess, so this week, all three of us watched together Birdemic Shock and Terror. And it was I think it was created in 2011. So it's
2010.
2010. So it's a pretty recent movie, but it's like doesn't really seem like that once you actually watch the movie.
Yeah, so this movie, if I told you that it was made in 1990 and then showed it to you, you would absolutely believe me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's that bad. So yeah, I mean it's like years behind where it should be as a 2010 movie, for sure.
Yeah, let's just talk about it.
Okay. All right, so let me give you guys a quick little review of Birdemic Shock and Terror. Directed and written and produced all by James Nguyen in 2010 is one of the most unique movies ever made. I want to spend less time talking about the story and plot so we can spend more time talking about how we feel about this movie, because it's just so fundamentally bad in every way. You just have to witness it to understand the rage that comes from watching this movie.
There was a lot of rage.
There's a lot of rage,
particularly from Nick.
Yeah,
I had a hard time.
He was antsy the whole time.
I had a hard time with this movie. I have some thoughts and feelings about it. All right, so we open the movie with basically 4 minutes of driving footage as we roll the opening credits and saggy camera work. The first 4 minutes is literally some guy that only has one arm recording the dash and out the window of a car driving down the road. And this really does go on for 4 minutes and nothing else.
Kind of makes me think of a little bit about Alfred Hitchcock, but like in a bad way.
But James Nguyen was inspired by Alfred Hitchcock movies.
I believe it.
He actually, in his room, I watched a documentary on this guy that made Birdemic because I hate myself. And he literally had posters of Alfred Hitchcock movies all around his room. He was obsessed with Alfred Hitchcock. So hence why he picked birds as the main subject.
There is a movie about birds. Please tweet at me if you know what the movie is by Alfred Hitchcock that's about birds, but there probably is direct correlation with that.
I think it is. Anyways, we open up the movie with those 4 minutes of driving, which is riveting. Our main character is Rod, a software salesman, and Nathalie, it is spelled Nathalie, an aspiring model, are brought together by destiny at a diner and spark a relationship. Rod and Nathalie both get huge promotions immediately after they meet, and life is good. Everything's going right for everyone in the movie. Then a whole lot of nothing happens for basically 40 minutes. Let me remind you that this movie is only 93 minutes long, so we are halfway into the movie and not a single bird has appeared.
False.
False. There are parrots.
There are
seconds.
CGI parrots basically 30 minutes into the movie, but I don't count that because that is crazy. Then out of nowhere, there are dozens, maybe even 20 birds that just... Okay.
Yeah, Nick, dozens implies more than one dozen.
My bad.
You're good.
Oh, fudge.
What?
There are dozens, maybe 20
You threw me
birds.
off when you got up and walked away. I was like, lost my train of thought.
It's all right. Like, it happens.
Out of nowhere, there are dozens of poorly rendered eagles and vultures mindlessly hovering on the screen. Rod and Nathalie meet up with another couple, Ramsey, and he's an ex-Marine, and his girlfriend, Becky. They run around the city shooting birds with guns that also come out of nowhere. They literally hop in this ex-Marine's van, and the dude pulls out an AK-47 and starts shooting at people. Actually, it's an M16, but he starts shooting at birds, like, out of nowhere. They save 2 kids after their parents are brutally murdered by angry birds. I'm not sorry for that joke. Becky is killed by a bird while she's trying to poop in the dunes at the beach, which
if we haven't said it by now, there is a not very subtle environmental tone to the themes of this movie.
Yeah, and so Becky is killed while she's trying to answer the call of nature in the brush, and Ramsey is killed by some birds that start to vomit acid on its victims. Rod and Nathalie and the 2 children continue to run around the city fighting birds until they come to the beach, where they have their final stand against the birdemic, but are saved by a flock of white doves, and all the birds just leave in peace. And that's how the movie ends. No explanation of why or what happened. There are birds that are angry because we are killing the environment, and some doves show up and save the day.
And they fly off and never get smaller over the course of a 3-minute scene of them just staring at these birds flying away.
Yeah, so in the Vice documentary about James Nguyen that I watched, he showed how he edited like in the editing bay in his software, and literally he just pulled a file, like a GIF file, and pulled it onto the actual footage and just stuck it on the clips.
Oh my gosh.
Like, that's literally how he edited all of it. There was no green screen, there was no special effects. It's just copy, paste.
Very
done.
Innovative.
Very innovative, very cheap, very cost friendly. They actually say that this was a no budget movie because, I mean, it did have a budget. He spent like $10,000 of his own money on this movie, but they say it's a no budget movie because there was no plan.
Yeah.
Like, he just gave the money that he needed, and it was so low cost and so low budget that it was like something that hadn't really been done in the way that it had been done.
So practically speaking, all he was paying was like, hey, can you guys come out here for a couple of hours this day and this day?
Yeah,
and people who came and acted or something like that.
And if you look at some of the scenes where they're in a bar or they're in a like store, you can tell that they didn't always ask for permission, or they didn't always tell everybody what was going on. There's a scene that's on the side of the highway where there's just people driving up and down the highway in the middle of this birdemic.
And they got guns out and they're looking at the skies and just shooting.
You don't think that the police weren't called that day?
Well, that scene was pretty quick, so I think they probably got out of there like before the cops could even get there.
Yeah, if you guys haven't seen this movie, I suggest that, and I'm gonna rant on this for a second because I had such a hard time watching this. If you haven't seen this movie, I suggest that you go into it with the expectation that it's going to be much worse than you think it is. I went into this movie with the expectation that I was going to actually be watching a film. I watched something that was physically painful to watch. There were scenes where it would show, first of all, we don't need to watch what our character is doing every single second of the day. We don't need a whole overview of his life and day. I don't need to watch him pumping gas or driving through traffic.
I wanted to know, man.
Which we did. We watched a lot of traffic. We watched a lot of pumping gas and traffic and selling $1 million sales that weren't...
Walking to the office.
Those were all scenes that were integral to the plot.
To be fair, he did have a nice car.
Yeah. It was a hybrid Ford Mustang.
Which, I looked that up. That didn't exist.
Oh, really?
That car wasn't a hybrid.
I asked you about that.
I think they exist now. But
They exist now. That car that he was driving was not a hybrid Mustang. I looked it up.
Wow.
So, it is a lie.
That changes everything. Those very important scenes with driving don't mean anything.
Well, if you're going to make a movie and preach to me for an hour and a half about saving the environment, don't have 90% of the movie be you driving around in a car.
And to be fair, in the movie itself, there is a line where the character says that he gets 100 miles to the gallon off of his hybrid Mustang.
Yeah, which didn't exist for Ford. That's not a thing. In 2010, that wasn't a thing. So there was just some ridiculous statements in this movie. I was talking about how the first 40 minutes is a romance between Rod and Nathalie, and just this like weird, really awkward, unnatural dialogue where
uncomfortable dialogue.
Very uncomfortable. And then the last 50 minutes is just you getting preached at about how humans are killing the environment.
Yeah. Josh, what are you thinking right now about...
So the thing I want to bring up, because apparently I can't just crap on movies. I wish I could, but I can't. The thing that I found interesting about this whole thing was that the entire setup for Rod and Nathalie's relationship was extremely uncomfortable and almost problematic. Like, to the level that, like, it seemed like he was kind of stalking her for the first couple of minutes of the film.
He did spend a solid, like, 5 minutes just staring at her in the diner.
Yeah, and then he walked after her, and she's like, okay, well, it was nice seeing you, bye. And then he chases after her and says, hey, I want your number. Well, he doesn't say that, but that's basically what happens.
Also, the first date they went on, when they're about to part ways, he says, can I come in? And she's like, no, I don't do that on the first date. And then the next scene is her talking to her mom and her telling her how awesome he is and how he doesn't think about sex at all and he's not trying to get anything from her. And I'm like, wait, that just happened. That's literally what just happened.
Yeah, but all that to say is that he shows a lot. Basically, he has a lot of agency in jumping into and making decisions at the beginning of the movie. And then for the rest of the movie, it is nothing but him being told what to do by one person after another.
That's
like, it's removed after minute 10 of the movie.
Yeah, he doesn't really say anything.
No.
After that, honestly.
Literally, it's just like, hey, Rod, do this. Hey, Rod, do this. Oh, my gosh, he's like, we've got to help them. And they're like, we can't help them. And he's like, oh, yeah, you're right. Various points in the movie.
Guys and girls, whoever's listening, this movie, you need to wear a helmet because I wanted to hurt myself. That's how terrible it was. It was physically painful to sit there and watch them drive through a scene and then them drive out of the scene and then there'd be a still frame for another 10 seconds and I'm asking myself, why are we not moving on to the next shot? In that movie, there's probably I would make a bet with you that there's at least 5 to 10 minutes of that movie are just still shots of nothing happening.
Yeah, I think there's that one scene where they're on the first date and they go to the restaurant and then there's a mural on the wall and then they just pan the mural and then they pan to like this random wall And it's just like,
it
what?
just stops. It just stops.
Yeah.
Like they forgot to click to the next scene. They could have shaved like 30 minutes off this movie. It could have been a short film. It would have been so much better.
Like, it was a good wall, to be fair.
Yeah.
Like, it was a good wall, but
It wasn't.
we hung out with...
I challenge you on that. That was terrible artwork. It was terrible. Everything.
But the problem was that we hung out for 20 seconds on like 1/5 of the wall at the end of this painting shot. It was ridiculous.
Ugh.
Basically, this movie had the visuals of a 1950s movie where Magnum PI is just rolling around and doing random stuff.
So I equate this movie to, you know how you go into the movie theater and they do the student films where they do like an advertisement for like popcorn and Coke, and how awkward and terrible and cringeworthy those commercials typically are?
Those were much better than this film.
No. You are wrong. Those commercials are terrible. Those students should fail those classes. I'm telling you, that movie epitomizes that feeling of cringe and horror and shock and terror. You know what? I think it actually accomplished exactly what it set out to do, and that was to make people feel uncomfortable. That's exactly what it did.
Yeah, I was shocked and I was terrorized. So, and
I was certainly uncomfortable.
I honestly don't think I was uncomfortable. Like, it was like weird.
I was pretty uncomfortable. There were some really awkward scenes.
Yeah, but I've seen a lot of more uncomfortable movies, and I've been in a lot more uncomfortable situations, which I think it's just like relative. But I mean, it was weird, but I was more shocked by kind of like how bad it was than how uncomfortable it was.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Are we moving on to ratings?
Already? Dear goodness. Do we not have anything else to say about this movie at this point?
So, I'll say this. I think everyone, if I had to watch this, I think you have to watch this. And if you're listening, and if I had to sit there and experience that, then I feel like the world has to reciprocate that feeling.
I don't think so. Guys, don't watch this movie, please.
Go watch this movie and feel the suffering that I felt.
I think, the point of the movie was kind of to have this pitch that we are harming our environment. And I feel like there was, 2 or 3 monologues by 2 or 3 characters.
There's a scientist.
Yeah. And then the
there's
guy...
a hippie in the woods.
And then the guy...
And the guy that sold him the solar panel.
Okay. So 3 guys.
I mean, Rod has a monologue, too.
Yeah.
And Rod.
Character.
Rod becomes an environmentalist.
So there's 4 monologues about kind of... Hey, Rod kind of gives a solution, and then the salesman gives a solution to, hey, here's how we can help. Which I feel like they should emphasize that more than actually the problem. It's yeah, we have a problem, and we are hurting our environment more than we need to, but how are we going to fix that? By switching to different sources, basically.
But see, I think that's why it makes me so angry, because I think you guys really should go back and watch that documentary about James Nguyen, because he doesn't say anything about the environment when he's talking about Birdemic. He only cares about the success of it.
Oh, really?
And I know certain people that have written about him have portrayed him as feeling a very personal mission towards it, but I didn't see that. I saw the same kind of megalomania that I see in Tommy Wiseau. There's this innocence of feeling like they're a tortured genius, but also there's this megalomania of I'm the smartest person in the room, no one understands me. And just watching and hearing the things that he said, I don't think he really, that was I think that was his mission at the moment, but I don't think that's his life. I don't think he feels passionately about that. I think he feels passionately about making it in Hollywood.
See, but that's one of the things that's interesting, is because I feel like that comes across in the movie, because all of the environmental monologues that we get are so poorly done that they feel more like jokes than they do actual serious things.
Yeah. I don't know. There's just everything that was done wrong. Every shot that was
soundtrack. But you keep talking.
The soundtrack is okay. If you just played the music in the opening scene, I would believe that it was an Alfred Hitchcock movie, or even like a decent horror movie. I would believe that, but it's just dash cam footage of someone driving down the road. But I don't know, it just everything was done wrong, and there's plenty of people that have talked about all the ways that they've done this movie wrong, and that's why it's a cult hit, is because it's so bad that people like gravitate towards it and enjoy watching it with other people. But I did not have that experience. I enjoyed watching it with you guys, but it truly was painful, and it hurt my soul to watch.
It was really fun to watch Nick suffer in this movie.
I feel like that's what I enjoyed most of that, unfortunately. Like, I can tell you just wanted to like leave, but you pushed through it.
I did. I pushed through it. I persevered.
But yeah, if you watch this movie, watch it with Nick and then some friends. Have a few drinks.
I'm not going to watch it with you.
Watch this movie. Wow. Watch this movie with the same people that you would enjoy watching a Hallmark Christmas movie with. Like, that is the caveat.
So no one.
I'm sorry, you have a very empty life, my friend.
Okay, are we on to ratings?
Sure.
Of this movie?
Sam? I think I'm going to give this an F tier. So the bottom of the bottom.
A man after my own heart.
Just because, I mean, for me, like, does it have a good story? Is there good acting? Nope. And is it well shot? And it doesn't do anything for that. And, I mean, the soundtrack was alright, but the sound effects were terrible. Like, I don't know how many times...
Literally the same sound effect the entire time for the birds.
Or, you can tell it was a zero-budget movie. Like... just kind of, they would be at the ocean, and then they have dialogue, and then they'd change the camera angle, and then there'd be ocean sound, and you couldn't hear the dialogue. But yeah, it's definitely F tier. I would never watch this movie again, even if I like watching it with like the bestest of friends, and I was having a great time.
Yeah, we've already, Sam and I've already talked about this before. We grade on the scale of, would we watch this again? Did we have fun watching it? Is it enjoyable despite how awful it is? And for me, the answers to all those questions are no. I would not watch it again. I did not enjoy it, not even ironically. And I want to stay as far away from this movie as I can. I'm so glad that I've never have to see it again. F tier movie. Do not watch it unless you are a masochist.
Josh, I think you're familiar with the tiers. What would you give it?
S tier being
and why
Yeah,
superior.
absolutely not S tier. It's not going up there. So, as the person in the room, apparently I'm the only one who likes watching Hallmark Christmas movies occasionally. But at the same time, I will only watch those with people who make fun of it mercilessly with me. I would probably give it an E tier. Like, there is a day on which I would watch this movie again. One of those days would be...
You said a D tier?
An E tier.
E tier?
It's great.
Because there's F tier, right?
There is.
Is there not an E tier in between D and F?
That's a good question.
Well, we have one now. So.
We have one now.
Okay.
Thanks, Josh.
You're welcome. I'm putting this at E tier because this was a pretty terrible movie. Like, the fact that every decision that was made in this movie was wrong, but not necessarily entertaining. I think I'll put the distinction there. But there is a day that I would watch this movie again. One of those days is with Nick if he said that he wanted to get some people together to watch it, or my younger brother, or somebody who's just going to enjoy talking over whatever the heck is happening in the movie. So, an E tier. Not a good movie, not worth watching on your own, but there is a day that I would watch it again.
I would feel bad for someone who watched this on their own. Like, yeah, I'm going to give a tier for that person.
Single tier.
F in the chats.
F in the chats.
Okay. Done. Good job, everyone. Well done. All right, Josh, we brought you here today, not just for chatting on porters and stouts and birds, but we also want to talk to you today because you are a dungeon master. Correct?
I am a dungeon master, apparently.
Apparently. How many campaigns do you manage?
I've had to back off a little bit in the past couple of months just because work has been absolutely nuts. However, I am part of running two campaigns concurrently right now. And then there is a third group that I participate in, and occasionally I'll run a couple of one-shots for them.
Very cool. So if you don't know what a Dungeon Master is, folks, that is Dungeons and Dragons, and that is the person who guides the player experience from beginning to end, which is someone who basically makes the rules and holds people accountable to the rules and make sure the story continues to flow.
And occasionally, if somebody wants to break or bend the rules, make sure that we're consistent across the entire campaign.
We have a question for that. So actually, let me go ahead and ask you one of my first questions, Josh, and it's a great segue into it, is what are some of the biggest exploits that you as a DM have seen players take advantage of?
Let's see. Honestly, probably the biggest thing is with meta magic with the sorcerers for right now.
Josh is referring to me.
I am referring to Nick Zamboni in this room right now.
I'm the cheese expert when it comes to finding loopholes and taking advantage of how much room that you give me to play with. If you give me an ounce, I will take a pound.
That's okay, but I'm going to toss that back at you one day, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be beautiful.
Can't wait. Today, honestly.
So if you're not super familiar with Dungeons and Dragons,
you forget I can transfer into the void now.
What's that? Blank.
Catch me if you can.
So if you're not super familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, there's a class called the Sorcerer. Of all the magic using classes, one of their things is that magic is innate to them. It's not something they've studied. It's not something that they've been given. It's something that they have naturally as part of them. And the way that that expresses itself mechanically is something called meta magic, which basically allows them to alter the rules of the way spells work. And so our friend Nick here, because I'm not intimately familiar with every single aspect of meta magic, made a compelling argument that there is a certain subset of meta magic called, was it Twin Spell?
Twinned and empowered.
Yeah, twinned and empowered spell. And so what that allows him to do is take a magic that is targeting a particular target and then split it into multiple versions of it that go and attack multiple targets. He asked me about that in terms of a spell that targets, up to 3 or 4 enemies, and asked, "Hey, can I get this to target more? Can I get this to twin and target more than that?" So technically, because it targeted, I said yes, but ultimately kind of my stipulation with that was, well, if you're going to take something that can only hit 3 things and make it hit 6 things, then I can do that to you later. Deal? And he took the deal, so I'm looking forward to using that on him.
I will probably meet my demise very soon.
He will be murdered.
I'll probably deal you.
I'll just make another character and do the same thing.
The other thing that I've heard about that I haven't seen done yet is multi-classing as a paladin and a warlock.
Ooh.
Which is interesting because paladins get a feature called Divine Smite that allows them to add magic damage on top of melee attacks, based on the level of spell slot that they get. Warlocks get a very limited amount of magic that they can cast during a rest, but they recover all of their spell slots every time they stop and take like an hour rest or something like that. And so what people can do is that they can take 2 or 3 levels of Paladin to get the Divine Smite feature, and then they can take the rest in Warlock, because Warlocks, when they use spells, always cast them at the highest level that they have available. So by the time you're like a level 10 Warlock, you can cast Divine Smite as a level 3 or 4 spell, which, long story short, is going to double or triple your damage output on every single hit that you make during that fight.
For all those of you who glazed through that and didn't understand a single word of that, hang in there. Got you.
So, Josh, I had a question for you.
Yes.
For someone who may not understand Dungeons and Dragons and would be thinking about getting into it, how would you pitch it to them?
Because this is the ultimate reason why we're having this conversation, because I'm a firm believer in, and I actually have a follow-up question after Sam's question about this subject. I think that Dungeons and Dragons is a perfect segue into creativity.
Exactly.
And people being, having fun, especially people that play board games. Board games is super interesting and super fun and a great hobby that people have. This is like taking it a little bit further, and I feel like there's a lot of good things to say about it. So back to Sam's question, how would you like bring someone who's like, I don't know about Dungeons and Dragons, like how do I like get interested in it? How do I get back into something like that?
I think my pitch usually boils down to, do you enjoy telling stories? And do you enjoy telling stories with your friends? Because there's a lot of dice, there's a lot of rules, there's a lot of mechanics that we could spend time on. But to me, ultimately, what Dungeons and Dragons is that it's a set of rules that helps you tell a story and figure out how the story ends up. Because all the dice rolls, ultimately what they do are they help you figure out, did the thing that you were trying to do work?
Yeah.
A dragon lands in front of you. You try to have a conversation with it. You make a compelling argument. Does the dragon listen to you or does it not?
Yeah.
And that's what all the dice rolls really boil down to. And so I like telling stories. I like telling stories with friends. I like being able to shift the spotlight off of me when I'm telling the stories. And what Dungeons and Dragons does is it allows you to get together for an evening, do something ridiculous, say, hey, can I try this thing? Have the dungeon master say, well, you can certainly try. And then roll a couple of dice and figure out if it works in an interesting way.
Cool.
Yeah, and I like that answer. And I kind of like, before you answer your question, I feel like, yeah, you can be as creative as you like to be. It's like
Yeah, there's really no limits. There's rules that you have to stick to, but you can do whatever you want.
And I remember we had a friend who was starting out, and she basically would just, like, do some crazy off-the-wall stuff. And it's just like, our group dynamic is very much kind of rule followers, I guess, in a sense. And she's like, no, I want to do this thing, and is very...
She's like, I want to do a back handspring off the wall, jump into the air, and try to shoot the ogre in the eye. Can I do that? And I'm like, yeah, roll me this, this, and this. If you pass, then yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and like, I was like, when she did that, at first I was like, oh man, here we go. But then I was like, oh wait, like, that's like her spin on her character story and her story in this universe that we're doing. And like, I should learn to appreciate that, and I could probably learn some things. Like, oh, like maybe I could do this or that. And yeah, it's really creative in a lot of different ways. But what's your question, Nick?
My question is, it's like a two-part question, and it goes off of Sam's question. What would you say to someone who's like, D&D is for nerds, D&D is lame, like, I don't want to be put into that kind of group? While you're thinking about that, let me ask you another question.
Okay.
Do you think that D&D has started to step out of that kind of stigma and bias towards being like for super nerds?
So I'll answer the first question or the second question real quick. Yes.
Because I think the second question helps you answer.
It helps talk about the first question. Yeah. So yes, I will say that I think it's started to step out of the shadows of being like a nerd culture thing.
Thank you, Stranger Things.
Well, thank you, Stranger Things. But also I'd say that there are some people who are very vocal about really enjoying D&D.
Yeah.
Like you may...
Rock.
The Rock.
Really? Mm-hmm. I did not know that.
There is a... I hope to find the stream one day, but there's a stream called Jox Machina.
What? That sounds incredible.
There's a Dungeons and Dragons podcast called Critical Role that is very popular.
I've heard of that.
The dungeon master of that is named Matthew Mercer.
Yeah.
It has a lot of voice actors from video games and from various cartoons and anime adaptations. One of the spin-offs that they did with that, or that's lightly related to that, is called Jox Machina. And one of the cast members of Critical Role is, what's his name? Travis Willingham. And Travis Willingham is a guy, like, if you were to meet him, like, the thing you would know about him is that he's absolutely jacked and that the Cowboys are his favorite thing on the face of the entire planet. Like, he's just this really big dude, and kind of what they did for this particular stream is that they got a bunch of wrestlers, of football players together who all played these big, chunky, tanky characters in like a 3 or 4 hour D&D session. And it was called Jox Machina, and it was like a fundraiser event at one of the big Wizards of the Coast events that they put on.
That's cool.
And so there are a lot of people who are vocal about being big supporters of D&D. I think it's also interesting. Again, Stranger Things is a big is a bit big to thanks for the game coming out. And really, I've been playing for like maybe 2 years, something around.
That's not that long.
Yeah, it's not a long time. I just happen to like rules a lot, and that's why I went with Lore Master Josh on my Twitter handle.
So, did you get connected through your company when you're in the fellows program? Is that how it worked? Or okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had a friend. I'll give him a shout out, Will. My friend Will. He was one of my coworkers, and he invited me over and said, like, "Hey, you're a nerd, right? That means you might be interested in Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, here's a player's handbook. Take a look at it and let me know what you want to do. If you want to come play sometime, we'll do it."
Nice.
And so we got a small group together who came and hung out and played through. Actually, Curse of Strahd was the module that was there. But to get back to that, to somebody who's on the fence about D&D, if I was going to bring it back around to that question, I mean, I would say give it a try. Like, if you're considering it, if you're thinking about it, give it a try. If you're not about it, that's fine. The thing is that this is a hobby. This is something that's fun and that you get to do with a group of people that you end up caring about more and more as you spend more time with them and telling more stories with them. And, it's a creative outlet. And if you have all of that already, that's absolutely fine. But if you enjoy fantasy, or if you enjoy whatever particular kind of setting that you're doing, like I know that steampunk settings, and there's some cyberpunk and stuff like that. One of the things that I really enjoy about role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons, though, is that it is an experience that happens to you even though you're not in the middle of it. And, when you tell stories about stuff that you do in a Dungeons & Dragons game, it happens to you and your friends. It is in your mind, it happens to you and your friends. But it's a story that you were a part of, even if it's a fictional story. And I think that there are some amazing experiences that come out of that you just can't trade for anything else that you could do.
Wow. I'm totally convinced.
Well, you were already convinced, so.
I'm putting myself in the shoes of someone who was on the fence. Wow. Awesome.
Totally agree with that last statement you said.
I agree with everything you said. What did I say? I don't know.
I said something.
Awesome. Any other questions for Josh, Sam?
No.
Cool. That's a great segue into Twitter questions.
Woo! Yeah.
Awesome. So let's get to our first Twitter question. Actually, if you follow us on Twitter, you are awesome. If you don't follow us on Twitter, you need to start following us on Twitter at BBB, Nick and Sam. Or you can shoot us an email at beersbmoviesandbattleroyales@gmail.com. So, Sam, what is our first Twitter question of the day?
Well, our good friend Alex asked this question, and he asked us, what is the B-movie equivalent of breweries or beer? And I mean, for this, I feel like it's just, for breweries in particular, it's like a place where you can't really engage with other people. And like, when I think of that, I think of kind of like I love Little Brother, but also like don't really like Little Brother because it's like not the best environment to talk to people. And that's kind of like the first thing I thought of but like honestly haven't really been to many bad breweries, so it's kind of hard to ask that question. I feel like
every brewery is bad if you look at it objectively. I think you're not necessarily going there for the experience, and I think there's probably some exceptions to that rule, but you're going there to hang out with friends or grab a drink or even get something to eat. But like, I went to Pig Pounder Brewery in Greensboro, North Carolina, and I've heard people talk trash about that brewery all the time, which I totally get why people talk trash about Pig Pounder Brewery, but I thoroughly enjoyed my experience. And it's kind of the same situation of a B movie. Like, you go there and enjoy the badness and you enjoy the awkwardness. Like, there was a band playing that was just awful. They were like middle-aged dads, and they were bad, and like they did some dance songs, and it was like it turned into karaoke really quick instead of a concert, and it was really awkward, but I loved every minute of it. So to answer that question, I feel like every brewery is the equivalent of a B movie, because there's always going to be that guy or that person that's like super cringy, or an experience that's just not great. When you get around intoxicated people, that's just what happens. So, and I'm a introvert, so I see it through like an even ultra razor sharp lens of like, it's magnified a million times. So that's kind of my answer to that.
Gotcha. What are you thinking, Josh?
I'm thinking it's just any brewery that you don't enjoy. Because the fact is, if you're going to a brewery, you're just going to have a good time, and if you walk away and there's something about the brewery that you don't enjoy being there, like, don't go back. That's okay. You don't need to patronize a brewery just because somebody else really enjoys it. You can say, hey, let's try another one.
Sure.
But my sister actually asked me a question. She didn't tweet at us, which Karen tweeted at us. But I don't even know if she has Twitter. Anyways, she asked me, have you tried any breweries around here? You mentioned Pig Pounder, and I mentioned the Little Brother. And
a shout out to 1111.
Like, there's been some kind of new breweries happen around town. I can think of 1111, which is kind of like a very high quality beer experience, but not necessarily high quality experience. Like, it's a good place to have a really good beer. And then
we went to Odin.
We went to Odin Brewery, which I would like to go again, just because I don't really get a good taste for it. And then there's South End Brewing, which I really like. I like kind of like the open space where there's outside, there's inside. Like, you can kind of hang out and do games, and the beer was pretty good too when I was there.
Sam, you remember when you and I went to Craft City? It's not a brewery, but we went to Craft City really late at night, and we were the youngest people there by like 40 years.
Oh yeah, we finished. Yeah, I don't know about good time. We just like pounded back our beers to get out of there. There's some older ladies eyeing us up a little bit. We're like, oh yeah, let's get out of here.
I mean, and you can't talk about breweries without Natty Greens. It's just that everybody knows it. But if they ever bring their cherry stout back again, that's my favorite beer in Greensboro.
Oh really? Wow.
Yeah.
Natty Greens is pretty solid. There's a lot of space, and they also have food. And
they're renovating too, so I'm excited to see what they do with it.
Cool. All right, Sam, what's our next Twitter question?
Alex asked us again, do you think RTS games will make a comeback?
I love this question. I think it's a great question. So I was thinking about this today. I'm not sure that we're ever going to see an RTS game return to the same level that we remember them by. And I think that myself and maybe a lot of other people look at RTS games through a lens of nostalgia, because when you think back to like Age of Empires or StarCraft or whatever you were playing at that time, they were ultra popular and people were obsessed with them. But now, I don't know. I think there's just too many options. I think that you have Xbox, you have PlayStation, you have so many other types of new genres and new types of games. You have Battle Royale genre, which is the most popular right now. And I just think there's too many options for that, for RTS to take that spot back again. But that's not to say that can't happen. I just think the pathway for that to happen again is very slim. And I think that unless you have something that revolutionizes the way we play RTS games, you're probably not going to see that. With all that said, I think that for game developers today, one of the most difficult challenges that they face is keeping their player base at a high or sustainable level. I think that's what everyone is worried about in the game developer community is how do I keep my players from going to Overwatch to Fortnite or Fortnite to Apex. And, you have a lot of people that play all of them or multiple games, but, there's a lot of player bases that die because there's not enough attention given to them. But I think you can make the argument that even though RTS games aren't quite as ultra popular as they used to be, they have made their comeback in the past 2 or 3 years because you have games like Company of Heroes or Hearts of Iron or literally any Paradox game that's an RTS, and they're doing something
Paradox
right.
Games is a publisher, just to clarify that.
Yeah, Paradox does a bunch of different RTS games. That's one of their bread and butter of what they do.
If you haven't looked at them, just about everything Paradox puts out is interesting, if it's not fantastic.
With that, even with that said, Paradox isn't perfect. They do a lot of things wrong, but if you look at them, they're probably the gold standard of what RTSs should look like and how you take care of your community, even though we could argue up and down all day long about DLCs are too expensive or I don't like this, I don't like that, but they're successful and they're doing something right and their player base isn't disappearing. They've established themselves and it doesn't look like they're going away. They have a long-term goal. They have new games coming out. They have a lot of new DLCs coming out for their games that they do have that's keeping player base happy. So I guess with all that said, the short answer is no, I don't know if you'll see RTSs make a comeback to quite the level that we remember them by. And maybe we're remembering them through rose-colored glasses because I don't know that you could say that RTSs were the dominant game mode. When Nintendo came out, that was it. I don't know that you can say RTSs were the king of the gaming world. You could probably make that argument, but I don't know that you would win that argument. But anyways, I think that they have made significant strides and are doing pretty good right now.
I think one thing to bring up is that I think there's a market for some of the things that RTSs bring to the competitive gaming scene. Probably my example that I would throw out of that is the auto chess subgenre that's been appearing, which has been kind of a spin-off of Dota and League of Legends, and there are a couple of them that are out. I think, Dota Underlords and auto chess and one or two.
Well, even Company of Heroes has a world championship, which is crazy to think about because that's a really good game and a really popular game, but that's also 5 years old or something. It may not be quite that old, but it's an old game and there's still world championships going on for Company Heroes. And
so the thing I would point out about auto chess is that the thing that's interesting about it is that the strategy doesn't come down to it doesn't require inputs. What it requires is that you pay attention to what your opponent is doing. Yeah. How are they building their team? How are they choosing to buy the pieces that they buy? And that's something that I would say is derivative of how you play an RTS. Well, knowing your opponent's particular strategy and adapting to it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I guess, Alex, I'm sorry to say this. I don't really care that they make a comeback, but I would love to see them make a comeback. And I think that kind of boils down to if they can have an effective competitive and ranking system. Because, that's what people want to get. People want to see that they're getting better, and you see that with StarCraft, and that game was super successful because it had a great ranking system, and people kept coming back to it. But most RTS games don't do that, but I'm not a big RTS fan, so sorry, Alex. Love you, man.
And that's such a shame because RTSs are the best kind of games. Okay, so Josh, this was a question you asked us last time, so we're going to answer it today since we're talking about D&D. Sam, what is your favorite D&D race and class?
I think my favorite class is Warlock. Having seen you play Warlock?
I'm a sorcerer.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
he's a sorcerer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess sorcerer. And just because, For me, when it comes to classes,
Sorcerer is broken.
it's like I want to, which I haven't really looked into kind of how to break the game, but that's how I kind of played actual games. I played video games. D&D is an actual game. I apologize to Dungeons and Dragons community for
Big
that.
yikes there.
Oof. But yes, I mean, I've enjoyed playing Paladin a lot. I've done that, I guess, twice. And my favorite race is the Hill Dwarf, just because they have this one feature that gives them 1 health every time they level up. And it's just, I like that.
Health is good.
Yeah, it is really good.
I'm gonna, like you said, Sam, my class right now is Sorcerer, but I have read way too much about the Lich, and I can't let it go.
It's not gonna happen.
Josh is never gonna let me be a Lich or some sort of undead character like that, but that is by far one of the coolest and most overpowered mechanics I've ever seen in all of D&D. Just reading about it makes me want to play D&D because just liches are unkillable. They're just
Josh,
unkillable.
how would you describe a lich?
Am I allowed to swear?
Yes.
Like bad swear?
Yeah.
PG-13. Can I use the one PG-13?
Yeah, sure.
Fucking evil.
Liches are not cool, dude. So I do enjoy the Sorcerer, though. Sorcerer has a lot of good, really high damage stuff that they can put out, which I like. I don't know what my favorite class is. I've really enjoyed one of our other people that's in our D&D group.
You mean Race?
Yeah, Race, who's a turtle, which is like half person, half tortoise.
It's basically Oogway from the Kung Fu Panda series.
Yeah, and he's just unkillable because he has a giant turtle shell, and I love it, and it's hilarious. So that's pretty fun. So anyways, Josh, do you have favorite D&D class and race?
Classes are hard because there are interesting things to do with it, but I have to say Warlock for right now. Just because I love the idea that you can gain power from like a supernatural being and not necessarily agree with the being and have a complicated relationship with them. And that's kind of one of the things that can happen with Warlocks. As to the races, I mean, probably Goliaths.
Goliath?
Yeah,
is that
Goliaths.
A thing? I didn't know that.
Like a giant.
I can still give you the source material if you want it. But yeah, basically it's kind of a nomadic group of mountain dwelling people who are like, their entire thing is that they're super competitive. Like there's no such thing as an old Goliath, because if they're keeping their tribe from surviving, like they wander off into the snow and choose to just try to make it on their own and die rather than keep their tribe from surviving. But, they're a big group of people. They potentially have connections to different kinds of giants, and I just think that they're an interesting race.
Awesome. Cool. Well, our friend Joey asked us a really, really good question. But
really good question.
I think that I think it's such a good question that we're going to come back to it on the next episode, because I think that we could actually do like a whole segment on this. So, Joey, love your question. We're going to come back to it. Guys, that went by really fast.
Yeah.
Any hot takes, closing thoughts?
So season 7 of the Clone Wars got announced. It's coming out in February. So I decided to watch the original Clone Wars miniseries by, what's this guy's name? Jindy Tartakovsky, which is the guy who created Samurai Jack. My roommate and I, and then a few random people, decided to rewatch it. It's about 2 hours, and it's basically just Samurai Jack in a Star Wars universe, and it's amazing, and it's on YouTube for free, so check it out. It's just Star Wars Clone Wars. I think it's like 2003, that's when it came out. And yeah, it's like I watched it growing up, and it was so good, and rewatching it again made me excited for the next season of Clone Wars.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to like catch up on all of it, and really, since I've seen like all the new Star Wars stuff, and there's not going to be any new content out for a while, get caught up on all that. So
have you seen the Clone Wars?
I haven't seen all of it, so I got to catch up. I mean,
it's really good.
Yeah, I know it is, but yeah, I'm also very excited about that. Cool. Well, guys, anything else?
If you haven't heard of it, I recommend Outer Wilds if you're looking for a really chill adventuring game.
Outer Wilds.
Yes. Groundhog's Day in space.
Cool.
Please.
Well, thank you. Oh, God. Go ahead, Sam.
Oh, I was going to say, please check us out on Stitcher, SoundCloud, or Spotify, and I'm about to upload this to Google Play. So
Hell yeah.
check us out at all of those, or one of them, whatever your preference. If you want to pay for iTunes subscription, then please just Venmo me some money, and we can get it on iTunes. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, and please follow us at BB Nick and Sam, and follow Josh at...
That's BBB Nick and Sam.
Yeah, did I say BB?
Yeah.
And then, is it Josh Loremaster?
Loremaster Josh.
Loremaster.
Dadgummit. It's Josh Loremaster.
You could try either one.
Yeah, you'll probably find it.
You can find me at either one. No worries.
I'm sure the other Josh, whatever one you are, I'm sure that guy's great too. So,
You have been listening to the Beers, B-Movies, and Battle Royales podcast. I'm Nick Zamboni.
and I'm Sam Collins.
Thanks for listening.